Well, I am so thrilled today. We are bringing back a guest that we've had on our show before, and we didn't have her on Zoom before. So right now we get to see her smiling face. And I just finished reading her newest book called Marriage Minded, an A to Z dating guide for lasting love by Marcia Naomi Berger. She's an LCSW. She has this wonderful book. I want to make sure everybody can see it, Marriage Minded. Whoops, there we go. And it's an A to Z dating guide for lasting love. And I know you've been married for 33 years. I've been with my husband, Lloyd, for 32 years, married 20, but I was married before and didn't want to do it. Took me 12 years to say yes, but it's lasting. And a lot of the things that you have in here are really wonderful, wonderful. I love you're using like these. Your A is you've got all these letters that things to remember, like acronyms. Like A is for ambivalence, anxiety, attitude, awareness, and awesome. I love the way you do this in the book. It's fantastic, and it's really easy to read. And I'm going to send this to my daughter because she says now she's finally ready to settle down, and that makes me happy. And we had you on our show before when we talked about marriage meetings, which also is a terrific thing when you're married to sit down and have meetings and continue to communicate. So that was a great book, and this is the second one. So first of all, for those of my audience who didn't get to hear you before, will you just tell them a little bit about your background and why you wrote this book?
Okay, yeah, as you mentioned, Mary, I'm a licensed clinical social worker, and I have been a psychotherapist for over 30 years now, working especially with couples and also around relationship issues with people, whether they're married or not married. And I have worked in the field of child welfare and alcoholism treatment and psychiatry. I worked at San Francisco General Hospital on the psych ward for a few years. And then I became executive director of the Jewish Family Service Agency in the East Bay. So I have a pretty wide background, different kinds of experience, which I'm really grateful that I could learn so much about so many aspects of life and its challenges and its joys. I wrote the book because I think there's a crying need for knowledge about a 21st century marriage, which is somewhat different from what marriage used to be like. A long time ago, marriage was more of an economic arrangement because to some extent, I mean, love, of course, we hope it's there, but women needed the financial support. Now, a third of women out earn their husbands. Other things have changed. People can live together with society's approval, more or less, usually. Can even have children without being married. So what's different now is that people are looking for a kind of emotional and spiritual fulfillment that maybe came in a lot of marriages before, but not necessarily. And it was less crucial because they had these other reasons for marrying that kept them together. But because society has changed a lot, these expectations have changed, and people need to know how to meet their often unconscious expectations, because I think a lot of the divorce rates that are terrible, as marriage really has been in trouble, are because people don't really know what they're looking for. And then when they don't get it, they say marriage doesn't work.
Right.
And what they really need are the tools, the techniques, the information, because knowledge is power. And that's why I wrote the book, to give that kind of knowledge in a very broad, comprehensive way, so that anybody with any kind of concern or issue can look in the index or the table of contents and find just what they want to learn about.
Yes. And I like that in your book, you talk about that you have to know and love yourself too. Because if you don't know yourself, I think in my first marriage, Naomi, I really didn't know myself. I was 22 the day I graduated. I got married to my college sweetheart. And I don't think either of us knew ourselves very well. And so after 18 years, we got divorced. But I do think that now people are getting married later. Do you think that's a good idea?
I think it's a good idea for people to marry at the age when they are mature enough and emotionally aware of themselves. They have enough self-awareness and, as you said, appreciation of who they really are, so they can be compassionate to themselves and sensitive, which we do need to be. I totally agree with you that you do need to love yourself first, before you can love the other person. So I wouldn't say that it's better to marry late, universally, because I see so many marriages where we met in high school and we still love each other. And on the other hand, I see a lot of what I call now starter marriages where they weren't really ready. And then after some time, they split up and then they remarried it like you and had long, happy marriages because they had learned more about themselves and how to create a fulfilling relationship.
Yeah, no one teaches us when we're young. Like, I know you were a child of divorce. That's something that you wanted to not have, right?
Right.
And I wasn't a child of divorce. My parents were together 50 years when my mother died. Excuse me. And I know that, our expectations are really important in life. But so, is marriage really that important now if people can live together? What do you think about that?
I think marriage is very, very important. People can live together. A lot of people live together because they've had a disappointing experience of one kind or another. I can say personally, I did not want to do the live together. As you said, my parents were divorced when I was 13. I think that held me back a long time from marrying. Well, I think one of my qualifications for writing a book for how single people can move towards marriage is that it took me such a long time. So I did have a long, active dating life in different relationships. However, when I got married, I wanted to know that it wouldn't be so easy to get out of, that I would hang in there and that he would hang in there. When you're living together, it's okay, maybe one foot's out the door. I don't, I mean, research bears this out, that the people who are actually legally married, by and large, have better marriage, better relationships than the ones that live together, more lasting, more fulfilling relationships.
I know for me, I was with my husband before we got married. I said 12 years. And I think when we decided to get married, there was a whole different level of commitment. And so I think that it brought us a lot closer. Of course, we knew each other really well. We knew both of us had been divorced and were afraid of marriage again. But I think by that time, after 12 years, we really knew each other. We knew what we wanted. And we have a friend, we have friends that were together 23 years before they got married. And then they also felt a new level of commitment. So
Right.
I
Yeah.
think that's great. And as an attorney, I tell people to get married because, especially if they have children, we have worrying about maybe spousal support and child support. You don't get spousal support unless you're married, at least in the state of California and many other states. And so I think in terms of community property in California or marital property in many states, it's really important legally to get married, especially if you have kids. So that's, I have that bias. For me, having been married before and being single and being my own breadwinner, I wasn't worried about that. But for people who aren't, who make this, commitment to each other and then they break up, I do divorces, hundreds and hundreds of divorces. And it's always painful for the people, but as a mediator, it's not as bad, obviously. But but there are legal reasons to get married, a lot of legal reasons, especially for a woman. Yeah.
I can see what you mean. You have the attorney's viewpoint, and I focus more on how to feel emotionally and psychologically, the well-being in those areas.
Right. Of course, then you get them when they're going through a divorce, and you you hear about all these legal disasters. And so
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
another
yeah.
thing is, how to
Yeah.
deal with that is so terrible. And I'm sure you deal with many people going through divorce and the pain of that. So I think that's why I like your book, because I think if you are marriage minded and you make your list of what you want, like I love that
Right,
when you
yeah.
get to L about lists, making lists of, who you are, what you want. I think you have to just be careful. I made a list before I met Lloyd, my husband, of all these things. And one of the things I made a mistake on was I said, I wanted that person to be, have experienced a lot of pain so that they would have compassion and understanding what pain was. And I swear he's got pains all over his body. So from being a general contractor, so you have to be very careful when you make these lists, right?
Okay, so
It's
yeah, Mary, that fits into the be careful of what you ask for category.
exactly, that's what it reminded me of when I was reading your book. Now, is there any such thing as an ideal marriage?
Is there such a thing as an ideal, does that mean perfect marriage?
Well, yeah. Is there
Well,
such
I
a
would
thing as a
say if you
perfect?
have two fairy tale perfect people, and I say fairy tale, because nobody's perfect. So I don't think we can say somebody has an ideal marriage if we're looking for perfection, but if we're looking for a couple that have this balance between their own individual selves while keeping the relationship way up there in their minds, and relate to each other compassionately and use the positive kind of communication skills that I write about in both of my books, they're going to have a good marriage, assuming that they've chosen well in the first place.
Right. And they continue to grow together, right?
Yes, yes.
Because I think that's one of the things that you've had in your book, about communicating. And it's so important that I think for me, of what I've learned from being divorced the first time and being in a committed, loving relationship now, is that, we are constantly helping each other to grow.
Right. Yeah.
And not grow where I'm way out there and he's way out there. It's like I'm going to grow and you're going to help me grow and I'm going to help you grow. And I'm going to be gently confrontive about your issues, and I ask you to be gently confrontive about my issues, right?
Right. Gently is the key word. And I was thinking about something that you said that made me laugh, about how growing, how important it is to recognize. I have this saying, once in a while I write about this, that marriage is the ultimate growth experience.
Yes.
Ultimate growth experience. Yeah.
Yes.
That balancing also, that balancing act, what you need, what I need, how do we make it work for both of us? We're always learning about that.
Yeah. And the other thing that really hits me is respect. Really respecting the other person, no matter what, even if you disagree with how they see things, unless they're like a murderer or something like that. But you have to have respect. Obviously, if you find out that there are a murderer, you're going to get out of that marriage, I hope. But really respecting who they are and being mutually respectful. I think that is a huge issue that I see, because I see people come to my office in mediation. So I see both sides. And if they're disrespectful to each other, it's no wonder that they're dissolving the marriage. Wouldn't you say that too?
Definitely. I have in the book, R is for respect.
R is for respect. I saw that. I love that. Yeah.
I consider it really, really important to, respect ourselves and to respect our partner. And there's a psychologist named John Gottman, maybe some people who are seeing this or hearing this have heard of. And one of the major causes is contemptuous behavior. And that's like the ultimate of disrespect. If somebody rolls their eyes at, because they don't like what you said or done, and that's disrespect. And there are many ways to disrespect somebody. Keeping agreements is respectful also. That's really important for building trust.
Yeah. And, I think we should talk about how you should handle that when someone says, when your spouse or a boyfriend or a girlfriend says something to you that is disrespectful. Obviously, this book is for women. That's how I perceived it. Is that correct? I mean, you're basically talking to young women, or not necessarily young, but women who want to that have marriage on the mind, right?
That was my original thinking, that this is for women. I'm a woman. It's what I know best. I've been through it, and on both ends, being single a long time and now married a long time. However, I understand now that men value this book also, married or single, women and men, because most of what's in it can apply to anybody.
Yes.
R is for respect, whether you're married, whether you're single. We talked about that. T is for trust, keeping agreements, attitude. If you have a positive attitude about yourself and about your desirability, you're going to be a different person than if you think I'm not worth it. Yeah, it really does work for anybody. Even though originally I thought this is for women. I understand women, but it works.
Right. And you talk about, from a woman's perspective, but most of the people who would read this, just like even my book, it's written by a male and a female, fighting for love, turn conflict into intimacy. Most of the people who read it are women, because for some reason we are wanting to, help our relationship grow more than men, it seems like. And I don't mean to put that down or anything. No. I think that's just the reality. Yeah, it
is a reality. Our brains are different. Women's brains in general are wired more around relationships than men's brains. Men's brains are wired more for other things. So it's not like one is better than the other. It's different. And we want to capitalize on our differences. And that's why women probably read the vast majority of self-help books.
But also, don't you think, Naomi, that as we change and grow, that we not only are role models for our loved ones and our spouses, or, whatever. But I think that we can also watch boundaries. So if I know for me that if I hear something that sounds disrespectful, then I will say, we want to be respectful toward each other. I don't want to ever say something that you feel disrespected. I'm asking that you do the same. And when you just said this, I felt disrespected.
That's wonderful. And you used your I statement. I felt disrespected rather than you're a mean, what?
Yeah. Well, as a mediator and having a master's in psychology, I've learned a lot as well. And also reading your books and other people's books, that I know that, when we want to gently confront, we want to say it. But I think it's about watching boundaries too.
Yes.
So, even though your book it speaks more to women and they're reading it, by them reading it, they can demonstrate the kind of behavior that is going to be helpful to be marriage minded and keeping relationships together. And if someone is disrespectful to you before marriage, you can imagine what it's going to be like after marriage, right?
Right. You have to pay attention to those red flags.
So what are some other red flags that for women who are listening to us right now and they're looking for a real loving marriage, what are some of the red flags that they should just run quick and find somebody else?
Well, I mean, there are extreme ones, like somebody who has some kind of addictive behavior, alcoholism or drugs or some other kind of thing that could make a relationship go downhill really quickly if they're not getting help for it. It's another story if they're in treatment. Those are pretty obvious ones. The ones that might be like, I guess if they're not married yet, you don't call it adultery, but they may still feel like they're being cheated on. You certainly don't want to ignore things like that. I can tell you
Dishonesty, you're talking about any kind of
dishonesty, not keeping agreements, being late all the time. But everybody has, their own deal breakers. And I do write about how, for some people it's this, for other people it's that. If you're a younger woman and you want children and you find out that he doesn't, don't expect that to change, So that's important, mainly to know, again, about what you really want, what you really need. And if it's not there, move on, don't waste your time.
Well, that's why I love your chapter on lists, because if you make a list of what is important to me, what do I want, and then they're not matching, you might as well get out before you get too involved.
Definitely.
So, that's a great way to gauge what, where you're going. I mean, if you make that list and this person is maybe, let's say, for example, my first husband was very sarcastic. And people would laugh at it, but I never liked that. And so some other people might like that, like what you're saying. They like that sarcasm. I never liked that. And I was too young at just, turning 22 and getting married, not really realizing. Now, my husband now, he's got a great sense of humor, but it's more self-deprecating and it's more fun and it's silly. And it makes me laugh all the time. Whereas my ex didn't make me laugh, but he did make other people laugh. But sometimes it was sarcasm at me, which
so was at your expense.
At my expense, and it wasn't happy. So I think when you just really recognize and say, what do I want? I think that is so important in your book to really know that, because if you know what you want, you're more likely to get it. Right?
It does happen. I had a list also, and I hadn't seen the list in a long time, I think, when I met my husband. But then I look back on it, I found it, and basically that was it.
Yeah.
And it doesn't, this person isn't perfect. That was one of, as I said, you can have everything on your list, but you're still going to annoy each other. That's part of the whole thing. You're going to annoy each other and annoy each other, and learn how to recognize when the big picture is good. It's normal to also get annoyed. We're two different people. We have different things that we do.
And that's another opportunity for growth, right? Because if I'm doing something that my husband doesn't like, all right, I might remind him of something too often.
Me too.
He goes, I know that. You don't have to tell me. And I go, okay, you know what? You're right. And so I don't want to be considered nagging, and I don't want to be considered, I'm so used to, as an attorney, reminding my clients, you better do this, you better do that. And so he's not my client, so I have to learn. But it makes me conscious of, am I trying to be controlling, or what am I trying to do? But it's a matter of listening and being self-reflective, which again is part of our emotional intelligence, right? Naomi? I mean, we really have that opportunity as we're in relationship to grow from that.
Definitely. In fact, under lists that you mentioned, there's 3 lists. Actually, one is what you're looking for in a partner. Another is what you have to offer, 10 of each. And I say do 5 areas where you have room to grow personally, and your potential partner might be noticing these areas too. So that we know that. I think knowing that means stop looking for the perfect person, because we're not, we all have room to grow, and look at the big picture. What's really important.
Right.
Is he kind? Kindness, K is for kindness. I have noticed, I do these workshops for single women, and I noticed they don't put kindness on the list. So it's very important to separate needs from wants. Somebody may want somebody with blue eyes, or a certain height, or a certain occupation, but that's so much, almost irrelevant compared to having the good character traits, and kindness is real big.
Exactly. So do you think that men nowadays are as interested in getting married as women are?
Just about, yeah, there's been some research on that by the Pew group that does these kind of studies, and it's very close. It's like within about a percentage point that men, and I don't remember the numbers, but it's very close. And most women and most men say they want to get married.
Right. So let's talk. Okay, so we know about young people dating. How are they different in their dating than, let's say, people who are, midlife, that have been through a marriage and now they're, they're dating in this new age here.
Yeah, I have M for millennials as one of the topics, and in some ways it's changed. In some ways it's not that different if people are clear that they want marriage. The way that that it's different, I think, is that, and lots of people meet on the internet, lots of people meet online. I think, and people of all ages are meeting online now, and about a third of marriages in fairly recent years are people who met online. So I think it's a really important avenue to include in the mix of how am I going to find him, how is he going to find me. There's the online dating. Beside, I think older people are probably still more likely to meet their partner through friends or through going to events or using a professional matchmaking kind of person.
Yeah.
Younger people much, I believe, I'm not really the expert on this, but just they're on their computers, they're on the phone all the time. and there's this idea that I don't have to invest too much in this person who I just met, because there's so many others to look into. And that can just get really confusing, because they could just push a button and look at the next woman, the next one, or the man. So that can make it easier to prolong dating and not have it go into marriage. However, I also have I have an example of a woman in the book who actually was working at a bank that I was using, and I talked to her about it because she was in that millennium age group, and she knew she wanted marriage. And she said, it's really important when you're dating to meet his family, get to know more about a friend, so that's more like the kind of dating that people who are older who do, if they're being sensible about their dating.
Yeah. So my friends who have been divorced, who are, in the, their kids are grown, they seem more frightened to date than those who are younger. And so what's that all about?
Divorce is very painful. You and I both experienced it. And you and your marriage, and me and my parents' marriages when I was 13. And so it's kind of like once burned, twice shy. So natural. I was very ambivalent about marrying for a long time, but I still knew that I wanted to, and I think that that's probably true for a lot of people, whether divorce has touched them one way or another way. And if you look at the statistics, the second marriages have higher divorce rates than first marriages, and third marriages have even higher divorce rates than second marriages.
That's if they don't grow, though, right? I mean, that's if they don't grow and learn from their first.
Exactly. If they've grown and learned, learned is a key word also. Yeah, that's really why I wrote the book, to get like knowledge in whatever area you need to really transform yourself into somebody who's going to be a great marriage partner.
Right. I know a lot of my friends who are older, who have divorced and maybe in their 40s and 50s. I think one of the big issues is sex. They're so afraid of getting, some kind of disease or something. I think that's a huge one. One of my male friends who told me, he says, you have no idea how scary it is for us men, if especially when they're dating women who have been dating a lot. So if you're dating a lot of people, you don't know what they've been doing. And he told me, which kind of, I've been with my husband 32 years now. So I didn't really relate to that, but he said, no, we're both going to get tested. We're both going to go through all these things. So, I mean, is this something that you have, you've heard from your clients as well, your patients?
I think it's a natural fear to have. I mean, back before I got married, the age was the big thing, back 33 years ago or so. And, when we were getting close to that point, I said, we can both get tested, and we did.
Yeah. So I
I
think
think
now
a
that
more
people are
crucial
dating
issue.
so many different people.
Yeah. Okay. I don't know what the point is of having, now that I've been married a long time, I don't know what the point is really of having, I guess if that's what you want to do. I mean, it doesn't sound like these are these women wanting to get married, or are they wanting to have
Yeah,
fun?
but yes, they're wanting to get married, but they are dating online and they're meeting a lot of different people.
Right.
And it's, that men that are afraid,
Yeah.
this one friend of mine,
Yeah.
he would really like to find the woman that he could really spend time with the rest of his
Right.
life.
Yes.
And he told me, every time you get kind of close to someone, before you do anything, you have to get tested. You have to do all these things. You have to find out everybody that they've been with. And I went, oh my God,
Let me put it this way. If you want to have a good long-term relationship, before you're at the point for physical sexual intimacy, you should have enough emotional and spiritual, both know where, I'm saying compatibility, both really know that if you really want to get married, research bears out that the marriages that are the most lasting and fulfilling are the marriages that delay sex for the longest time before marriage, and sometimes even until after marriage. So that would negate the whole idea of having sex with anybody you're physically attracted to. It's like fun at the moment, but then, you may decide you don't even like this person in a week or two. So that's number one, is overall caution is advised, regardless of whether you're going to get a disease or risking getting something. And then once you're at the point where you both feel ready in a mature kind of way, where you really know each other way beyond the physical attraction or chemistry, that's when the time is to talk about what your fears are, and because you can trust this person with your fears and your wants and your hopes and your dreams.
Beautiful. This is a beautiful way to end, because if you want to be intimate physically, it's really going to be wonderful if you're intimate mentally and emotionally. So this is
sorry.
Well, we're really out of time, but I wanted people to know about this book, Marriage Minded, an A to Z dating guide for lasting love. We've been speaking with Marcia Naomi Berger, a wonderful book. I really recommend it. I think the A to Z is fantastic, and the lists really help you to grow, because I think people just get into relationships without thinking ahead of time. And this gives you a way to be mindful and conscious about having a really loving and lasting marriage. So, Naomi, thank you for writing this book. It's great. It's wonderful.
Oh, thank you so much for saying that. Yeah, thank you for having me on your show.
Okay, well, thank you. And now we wish you the best with this book. And I think people will get a lot out of it. I think it's terrific. So have a great day. Thank you.
And I say, make a great day. It's in your power.
Make a great day. That's right. Make it and have it and be it. Yeah. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.